Hi, everyone. We are again here with Dr. Nurmagomedov. And in the previous videos, we talked about the process of getting into medical system in the United States, starting from writing USMLE exams and going to residency. And now it's time to talk about fellowship, because fellowship is another very important part about the process before you can become licensed physician in the United States. And I would like to ask my friend to tell us more about it, because I am playing a role of a person who just knows very little about the process, and I'm trying to gather more information from his experience. And he passed all steps for USMLE from the first trial. He also got into residency in neurology, and then of course he had to go and get fellowship in order to become fully licensed. So I'd like to ask you to tell us how did that process work for you, and what key steps you had to follow in order to get into fellowship, and why you need to follow those steps.
Well, first, um, correcting you a little bit, you can still do, become a physician and practice after you graduated from residency. But if you would like to, specialize or subspecialize,
Mhm.
because for example, neurology is already specialty.
Mhm.
It's a narrow specialty already. But comparing to internal medicine, when you graduate from 3 years of residency, internal medicine residency, you are not subspecialized, right?
Mhm.
So you can choose to subspecialize.
Mhm.
So some people know what subspecialization they want to do before they even entered into residency. Some people find out about it while they training in residency.
Mhm.
Some people choose to not to do it at all. So
Mhm.
they graduate from internal medicine, they become primary care doctors or internists in the hospital, or just a neurologist, like a general neurologist. Um, and some folks do for some time, that general neurology, internal medicine, and then choose to subspecialize. Um, for everyone is different, but for the folks who decide to do the fellowship right away after residency, um, it depends from specialty to specialty. In internal medicine, it happens in during third year,
Mhm.
the application process, final year. In neurology, most of the subspecialty fellowships in the third year as well, but neurology is 4 year residency.
Mhm.
So it's not final year, the year before final year. Few subspecialties in neurology happens in the fourth year too,
Mhm.
but most of them in third year.
Mhm.
Um, you have to like kind of get exposure as much as possible in subspecialties within your residency so you can kind of feel how it feels like to be like subspecialist in a certain area. Does it fit you? You know, this is what you like to do for the rest of your life, or it doesn't work for you. Um, that's, I think, the most important thing to go through. And once you kind of know where you're at, you start to work with those um, attendings and
Mhm.
physicians who are subspecialized. So again, same process as with residency. You need a recommendation letters. You know, somebody have to recommend you. And then you start to look for the programs similar to residency. Uh, I know that getting into fellowship from neurology residency is much easier than getting into fellowships from internal medicine, the subspecialties from internal medicine like cardiology, GI, pulmonology, palm crit, and other subspecialties in internal medicine. And the time of the education or training during the fellowships is different. In internal medicine, most of the fellowships are 3 year. In neurology, it's usually 1 or 2 years,
Mhm.
depending on fellowships. some people choose to do multiple fellowships in neurology. And that's also, an option for certain folks, who wants to be subspecialized
But
for
does
the.
that increase their chances to get a better job and better placement? Is that the prime reason, or it's just a specialty
Mm,
itself that drives that decision?
for different people, different reasons.
Okay.
I've seen folks because it's easier to get into fellowship if you are, like I was on a J1 visa.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, then for example, if you want a work visa, H1 visa, it's harder to get into fellowship if you're on H1 visa,
Hmm.
and that could be a reason. You know,
Hmm.
um, but I don't think it significantly changes your chances of finding a work.
Hmm.
It depends what kind of work you want to do.
Hmm.
Folks who wants to do more like academic
Hmm.
way of um, having their career more in academic setting, in academic hospital, they choose to do more fellowships on average compared to folks who don't want to do that way. You know, and I think that's the main factor.
Yeah.
But finding a job, it should not be. It's usually not significantly affected by amount of fellowships you did.
Hmm. But I
Uh,
know that for some specialties, especially surgical, it can be
mhm.
more important because I think.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Makes sense. If you become more like a narrowly specialized, you will theoretically that makes sense. You will find a job easier, but don't forget that not every single hospital will have the equipment for you to work in, so they might not need you because they cannot afford it. So that means that you actually, uh, yes, your chances increasing, but your chances will be narrowed by the hospitals that they can hire you. You know,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it means that if those hospitals filled up,
Hmm.
they don't need you. So it's kind of double-edged sword.
Hmm.
So it can go both ways
Hmm.
in the end.
Definitely. And how many programs did you apply for?
So the fellowships is much easier than residencies.
Hmm.
Um, Again, depending on where you're coming from, what fellowship you're doing. Most
Hmm.
of the internal medicine, why I know internal medicine, because neurology is close to internal medicine. Mostly internal medicine fellowships, they go through the same thing as you did through residency. It's a match program, the matching system. Most of the neurology fellowships, they don't go through that. It's basically you communicate to the program. You send an email, you call them, say, here's my documents. I
Hmm.
want to apply to you.
Hmm.
And they say, okay, we want to see you in interview. So you don't actually pay anything except just traveling, you know. Um, and in that way, like for example, neurology, some fellowships is easier to get into and apply to. Maybe surgical specialties, they go also through the same process of the matching online, and you pay the money, fee, and everything.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay. And
it
is your
might change again. 5, 10 years from now, it might change.
first thing? Yeah. No, but do you think there's something special you need to do during residency while you are preparing and you trying to apply to fellowship? Is there anything that puts you aside from other candidates while you're in resident?
Yes, so there's common thing like you have to work on your CV,
Okay.
kind of show that you had interest in this, field. You, let's say, did some uh, research during your residency times, or you did some publications, or you went to conferences, conferences and presented something, and within the case reports that you did. So those things, they increase your chance of getting into fellowship. Yes,
Hmm.
that's correct. Yes, it does. And then during the residency, there in the final year in some residencies, and there is another additional year for some residencies. You can become a chief resident. You
Hmm.
know, And if you're a chief resident, you have even higher chances of getting into like higher ranked fellowships, because you're more desirable in a way.
Hmm. Okay. I guess I'd like to recap the importance of fellowship.
Hmm.
Number one thing is, if you are trying to be much more specialized, you definitely
Yep.
need to have a fellowship. But in general, ex- the fact that you have it or you don't have it would not really matter for your future placement as a physician. Am I correct? Am I getting it correctly?
That is correct. Yes, yes. And again, where you want to be placed, or where you want to practice, or what's your career in your head looks like. Is it more academic setting? And if it yes, then you will need the fellowship. Or
Yeah.
let me correct myself. Not you will need, but it would be more preferable. Because you are doing fellowship, you can do some research because you will have longer time. And then you can show that, oh, look, I'm more research oriented. I like academic settings, and I want to be part of this academic center.
Yeah. Okay. What would be your main suggestion as your own tip for people who want to get into fellowship? What do you think is the most important thing they should follow or be prepared for?
Well, the 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 folks who are preparing to graduate or close to graduate from residency, they should realize that, okay, do I want to spend another few years training, you know,
Hmm.
or I'm ready to, practice as I am, as what I know, and I don't need to subspecialize.
Hmm.
Again, correct myself from previous. You you do fellowship not only to be an academic setting too,
Hmm.
because you can still work in a hospital-based setting. You can still work in a private setting and be subspecialized.
Hmm.
You know, so I work in a hospital-based setting. It's not academic setting. It's not private setting, but I'm subspecialized. So since I'm subspecialized in epilepsy. I see more epilepsy patients, and I read EEGs, and I do like EEG monitoring for the patients. Um, so again, can be different for everyone. But again, there's higher tendency for folks to do more fellowships when they want to, have more time to like build up their CV, have higher, connections with the academic settings and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Tips is, you know, by that time you will know what the tips. Just during fellowship, you have to learn hard, that speciality because you will not have a long time in the same time, and it's very narrow.
Hmm.
So you will have enough time for learning, and then you can have enough time for even doing some research at some time. So
Hmm. I
yeah.
also heard stories when people choose fellowship and they're not satisfied with the level of exposure. And some
Hmm.
people say it's a little bit of waste of time because they potentially could have gone to a different program. What will be your suggestion on the research? What will be a good criteria for the program to consider for you to go to and apply to? Because
Uh,
obviously, as a doctor, you want to get the maximum of experience and learning opportunities from the program.
yeah.
And some programs I've heard that people are not as satisfied as with others.
Well, yes, it is a potential possibility. I think and depends again what's your expectation. I cannot like say for everyone else for other subspecialties,
Hmm.
but for example in neurology, um, every single program differs from other programs, especially fellowship. Even residency programs, they're so different sometimes. I got during my residency, I got exposure a lot to the stroke management, seizure management,
Hmm.
inpatient management, and um, acute neurological care management.
Yeah.
But some programs they don't have that. Some programs they're heavy in outpatient management.
Yeah.
So it's some programs they are inpatient but only consulting. The neurologist consultants only there.
Mm-hmm.
So you become a different neurologist from different programs. So
Mm-hmm.
it's your expectation, general expectation, and then try to feel it as much as possible when you do interview, and
Mm-hmm.
try to get in contact maybe with previous graduates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your experience. I'm sure many people will appreciate this because I think it's a very valuable knowledge to have. And if some people are considering getting through the whole process, I think they should be ready for long process, but
Yeah.
it pays off.
I think also it's worth to mention that for foreign graduates, the another big part is the visa process. For residency, most of the residencies they accept only J1 visas. J1 visa is exchange student visa, and under umbrella of J1 visa, the alien physician is the part that we fall into as a trainees.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and after graduating, there is a specific rule that you have 2 years of home country commitment. That means that you have to go back to the country you came from for
Mm-hmm.
2 years before you can re-enter the United States. Or you have an option to do something called the waiver job.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of bypassing that 2 years of home country residence. And in that case, there are specific programs in America and every single state that you can do 3 years of like a service working as a neurologist or any other specialty in underserved areas. So yeah, that's where I am,
Yeah, that's great.
currently working in underserved area where there's not enough neurologists. So
Mm-hmm.
and that the government program gives the opportunity to kind of benefit the communities in underserved areas. At the same time, I benefit from like bypassing the 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I work for 3 years. I have 3 year commitment.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think that was great and very helpful. So, as I mentioned before, we will maybe chat after this video is over, and we will see what kind of resources we can share with people so they can go and refer to. And I'll leave them underneath my video so they can just log in and see. We'll talk and we'll decide. And hopefully that was helpful for everyone who was watching. I want to say thank you to you for taking your time, sharing your
You're
experience.
welcome.
Yes.
Welcome anytime.
Yes, thank you so much. And yeah, I look forward for comments, questions from people that watch this, and I look forward to talking to you again.